Okay, so hopefully the lighting's okay. We're gonna try to get at least some of this video done. I have some other stuff. I just finished my one class tonight and I have some other stuff to do, but I really wanted to do this video. Main purpose being, and I'm not gonna call out, I mean, there's some fakes out there I really would love to call out, but I'm gonna let other people that have already done that do that. But I wanted to address something, and one of the reasons I'm not mentioning any names is because the main person I've seen on several videos recently that is kind of the main focus, although it might take me a few minutes to get there, of this video, is, you know, they're a strong service dog advocate. I don't ever want to discourage that. One thing I want to make sure is that we're getting correct information out. But I don't, like I said, I don't ever want to discourage the advocacy, service animal advocacy, because it is important. So just a little bit of information. Hopefully this doesn't bore you, but it's kind of sets the stage for some of the stuff that I'll go into later. So one of the, okay, I'm trying to decide, like, I had in my head what order I was going to do this in. And yeah, of course now, and you know I'm not going to edit it because I don't have time. I'm already probably going to have to break this up because I'm going to do a few minutes and then I got to go teach my little guy and then probably come back. So we'll see. We'll just do explanation, like I said. Hopefully it just doesn't bore you to begin with. So something that people may or may not realize, especially as far as like federal versus state laws, things like that. Just basic information. We're supposed to be a federalism system. The federal government's not supposed to have as much power as the state governments. Federal government's supposed to be limited. I'm not going into where we are there nowadays, but that'll make more sense in a minute. Obviously, you have the Constitution, but as far as federal laws go, when Congress passes the laws, most of those, pretty much all of them, I would have to check. I don't want to say all. When you get into law school, you almost never use all or never. So you get out of that habit. And so, yeah, you get a little careful about using absolutes. But at least most of anything that's passed by Congress goes into the United States Code, the USC. And what happens is, obviously, federal law, but a lot of the US Code, including the Americans with Disabilities Act, it's written this way on purpose. It's written more vague, more general and broad. And that way, first of all, it's easier to get passed through, you know, especially nowadays with the way things are with laws getting passed. But that also allows, since there are other methods that I'll explain in a minute, it allows definitions to change, you know, regulations to change, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, like the Air Carrier Access Act regulations that just got updated, but I'll try to stay off that soapbox. But a lot of people don't realize, and honestly, I didn't realize, I knew about the US Code, I didn't realize this difference until I started researching for my manual, because you go on the ADA website about service dogs, and they don't quote the laws. But just for example, the Americans with Disabilities Act, I think I've got the citation, I've got my manual over here on my iPad, so it's 42 US Code 1281 to 12181, to 12189. It may encompass a little bit more than that. And then there may also be other sections. That's one of the citations I have. I have others as well. Yeah, public services. And so there's parts of the US Code. But the thing is, what happens is you take the US Code and what defines things, what sets the regulations and most of the rules is called the Code of Federal Regulations, CFR. Now, this is not passed through Congress. It's done with administrative agencies, but it holds the same standard as federal law. It's considered federal law. That's where your definitions for service animals are, most of them. You know, the guidelines. One good example that we see, you know, especially service animal handlers see way too often. One thing you hear in public access is, well, this is private property, so I can do what I want. I can kick the service dog team out. The thing is, first of all, just based on that reasoning, if it was private property and you didn't have to follow the ADA, then you wouldn't have to have handicap spaces and wheelchair ramps for access. Yeah, that's the end of that soapbox for now. But for that, as far as public property question goes, in the Code of Federal Regulations, it actually defines public entity, private entity, but then it goes, okay, here's public accommodations. And guess what? Private entity, anything that's not a public entity, so pretty much anything not owned by the government. And it says, yeah, these are all public accommodations, and it lists a bunch. But yes, you are considered public accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act. and the corresponding Code of Federal Regulation. Now, okay, I'm still deciding which order. One thing about the ADA, the CFR, because it's federal law, it applies to all U.S. states. I'd have to look at the territory. That's not the type of law you generally study, do a lot of broad stuff in law school. But it does apply to the states. Well, here's the thing. As far as something like the Americans with Disabilities Act and the corresponding regulations, a state cannot take away from that. And in this case, you kind of have to flip it for the ADA, but a state could not add more restrictions than the ADA allows. One example, the ADA says if the service animal handler, does not have an obvious disability, a public accommodation may ask 2 questions. A state could not turn around and pass, okay, have they done it? Yes. Is it legal? No. Would it stand up if somebody challenged it? No. But a state can't say, well, I can ask more questions. I can make you demonstrate the task. They can't add to that. They cannot make it more restrictive. They can't add more requirements. Now, that being said, states may add more protections. And one of the areas this is extremely common with ADA and service animals is with service animals in training. The ADA and its regulations don't mention service animals in training, and I wish, they could update the regulations and not have to update the actual ADA, the U.S. code, but this needs to be standard, because as of a little over a year ago, I need to look sometime soon, but y'all know with my schedule, it's kind of crazy. But as of a little over a year ago, it was less than 5, so it's less than a handful, but there are still at least a couple states that don't grant public access to service animals in training at all. If a place, business wants to kick out a service animal training, they can. There's some states that only allow service animal training public access if it's with a recognized organization. So owner trainer, handler trainer, someone like me that trains others, but it's, I'm not a big org or anything like that. That would be a problem. And then you've got states that, look, service animal in training is considered the same thing as a service animal. Now the behavior requirements then become the same. But so that's just one example of where state law can't add more restrictions, but it can protect more. The main focus of this video is one other area that people don't realize, and I understand that people don't realize this. One thing, and this is true probably with any area of law, but it's definitely true with the ADA and with the service animal stuff. People will hear something, they'll pick up on something, and it's easy to research, but they don't necessarily do the research now, or it's been said over and over again on different websites, so they just take it as true. One thing that is very commonly said is, it's a crime to portray an animal as a service animal. It's not. It's a crime to deny access. Here's the thing. The Americans with Disabilities Act and the regulations that go with it, this is a civil law. It is not a criminal law. If someone violates the ADA, especially regarding the service animal provisions, they can't be charged with the crime. Now, you can call it in. I've heard people say, well, I'm going to file a complaint, an ADA complaint against you, or no, file a complaint with the ADA is what I hear. It's actually you file an ADA complaint with the Department of Justice. But you hear that. You can do that. It can result in a fine for the business. You can also sue for discrimination. And, in most cases, if you're legit, you'll win pretty easily. But it's not a crime. Nobody can be charged with a crime under the Americans with Disabilities Act and its regulations. And this is the main focus of why I want to do this video. I keep hearing, you could go to jail for this and that and the other. Not under the ADA, no, you can't. Not under federal law. I've heard it's a federal felony, and I've heard that many places. It's common misconception. It is not. It is not a federal crime at all. Actually, there are some obviously federal crimes, but most of your criminal law is based on state law. That's handed to the states. There's obviously some big stuff, and crossing state lines becomes an issue federally, but most of that is state law. In the case of the ADA, sorry if there's any background noise. I gotta go teach my little guy in a minute. I homeschool, in case anybody is watching this and didn't know that. And I homeschooled before the pandemic, but anyway, try to get as much as I can done here. But so if you violate the ADA, it's not a crime. Lawsuit, get a fine. The fines can get significant, especially if somebody's reoffending, but it is not a crime. It is not a federal misdemeanor. It's not a federal felony to portray an animal as a service animal if it's not, to deny access to a service animal. It's not. And there's probably some debate about, maybe it should be. I'd rather the states deal with this instead of the federal government as far as actual criminal stuff on this. But that's just my personal preference. However, that being said, there are states like mine where because again, the states can offer more protection. And one of the more protections is to make denying access to a service animal a crime. In my particular state, denying access is a crime. Impeding a service animal being able to task is a crime. Injuring a service animal is a crime. And then it is also a crime to portray an animal as a service animal or service animal in training if it's not. Now, bear in mind, I'd have to look. I don't remember any states that I've found where even, that if it is a crime in a state, it's a felony. Everywhere I've looked, I think it's a misdemeanor. Example here, the misdemeanor, it would be up to a $500 fine, up to 90 days in jail. Now, with my externship working for a judge this semester, I can, after the thing, because she handles criminal and civil, and so the things I've already seen a lot of criminal hearings on all sorts of stuff, plea and sentencing, and I'm going to tell you right now, for a misdemeanor, you're not likely to get jail time. Now, I will say, with the judge I happen to work for, you might, because I'm training a service dog for her husband. That's how we met, and then kind of fell into, oh, wait a minute, you're a judge? Oh, wait, do you need somebody I have to do an externship? And kind of happened. But again, I wouldn't want somebody's bias. Now, I would be stricter with something like this, but that's just me personally. Again, that's probably some bias. But those are the possible penalties in this state. So when people out there, YouTubers, handlers, other people say, oh, it's a federal crime. It's not. It's not a federal felony. I don't know anywhere. It might be. If it is, comment. Please tell me if it is a felony in your state. Haven't found that. Haven't looked in a while. Most states that do make it a crime, it's a misdemeanor. And, some states will say, okay, denying access is a crime, but nothing else. Or denying access and injuring a service animal is a crime, but nothing else. My state happens to offer quite a bit of protection. And yes, I live here. I love it. I love having family close. But y'all know I'm from the South, and I miss being down there, especially with 2 feet of snow on the ground right now. That's stacked up over a few weeks, but I don't like cold. Anyway, so yeah, that's the focus of this. Look, it is not a federal crime. People cannot go to jail for, and even in some states that protect as far as you can't deny access or it's a crime, they don't always have portraying an animal as a service animal when it's not as a crime, or a service animal in training when it's not as a crime. So please bear that in mind. I'd really like to make sure we get accurate information out there. Please advocate. And, even if you're not a service animal team, if you're not a service animal handler, a lot of people, especially, there's a lot of service animal handlers out there that, because of their disability or for one reason or another, can't advocate the way someone like me can. Not just because of knowledge, but I'm going to stand up and, if somebody tries to do something. I've shared a story I don't remember if I mentioned the restaurant's name, so I'll just say fast food restaurant, where I had to actually threaten to call the police because they were trying to deny access. But I would encourage you, if you see something going on, please step in and say something. The more people we have advocating, the better off we're going to be, as far as the fakes not getting away with it, but also the actual legitimate teams being protected and not being given grief. And I figured I'll finish this with a little bit of a story time. Sort of kind of good, bad example of what, I'll just go into it and I'll let y'all decide good, bad example. This was, it was a couple years ago, because it was before I got Gemini. I had Aslan, my lab, my first service dog. And we were south of where we are now, but still over here, fairly near the lake shore. And I was at a store, not a huge store, but, there's part of me that wants to give you the name, because I have seen a couple of recent videos where apparently this store, employees have said, we're not supposed to say anything. You don't, say, and I understand people are so stressed about getting sued. I get that. But the thing is that it seems like the people that are the most vocal, let's say most obnoxiously vocal, not always, but a lot of times, are the ones that aren't legit. And so not being willing to say something, you're hurting. And especially if you're not willing to say something, the stores aren't, then it affects those of us, the legitimate teams. You could endanger the public, you can endanger us, our animals. Yeah. So apparently, like I said, I've seen recent videos where this store is not as willing to say something. But this was a couple years ago, and assistant manager really wasn't much help then either. But I was in the store. Now, bear in mind, y'all know Gemini goes everywhere with me. Aslan did too. There are extremely rare occasions where if I know I'm going to be in a place less than 5 minutes, every once in a while, and it happened to be the case this day because there's snow on the ground, and because I had parked in the garage, I had not put Aslan's boots on him. And there was salt in the parking lot. And I was like, I don't feel like putting those on. It's easy to do, but I just didn't feel like dealing with it. I knew I was going to run in and run out. So I get in this store, and I get to the back of the store, and I see a lady with a dog in a service dog vest, and it is in the cart, and it is whining. It was not barking at this point, but it was whining and kind of fidgety in the cart. And there are some rare situations where you could basically carry a service animal if they can alert that way. Most of the time, they should not be in a grocery cart. But again, I'll try to stay off that soapbox too. But I saw it, and of course, I'm not afraid to say something. And so I approached the woman, and I tried to be really nice about it. And so I said, "Ma'am, is that a service animal who's not supposed to be in a grocery cart generally?" And her first, she just got hostile from the get-go. She turned to me, "Are you challenging me?" Apparently, I found out later she thought I was an employee. I wasn't, not sure why she thought that, but I kind of, no ma'am, but I am asking because I'm extremely aware of the laws regarding service animals. And she said, "Well, if you're challenging me, you can get sued," and did it. I said, "No, actually," and it was literally maybe 2 words into her second sentence. When she asked, "Are you challenging me?" the dog didn't do anything other than whine. The minute she started talking again, this dog starts barking. And it's a toy breed. And it starts barking. And so she's rambling, and I'm like, all due respect, that's not okay. You have to be able to, if the dog is disruptive, you have to be able to bring it under control. Well, you're the one upsetting it, so it's your fault. No, the service dog should not react this way. And you should be able to bring it under control. And she was fussing at him. She just kept barking. And so she was so loud that an assistant manager, who was the manager on duty, came over and was asking us what was going on. And she starts ranting and raving and griping, and then she storms off. And so I explained to the assistant manager, "Here's the deal. Not a service dog. You can kick this out. This is a danger to both the public and other service animal teams." And the assistant manager was not overly willing to take any action, unfortunately. But she's like, "I'll pass on that information." Okay, fine. So I went to the register to check out, and this lady is coming back through the front of the store, and she starts just jawing at me again. And again, she's yelling across the store, I only spoke loud enough for her to hear me, but she just went on. And I'm like, "Look, we can sit here and argue. I know what the laws are." And one of her comments was, "Well, I have papers on him, so he's certified." And I said, "Yeah, that's not legit. That's fake. There's no actual certification. I will accept there's a few large orgs that have their own certification. I know one that has that's big here in this state, where basically their certification, when they do their own vests, and that's a very big deal to earn their own vest. But as far as actual national certification, national registry, no, those are all fake, because a national doesn't exist. It would be really hard to do that. First of all, it would make it cost prohibitive because you start trying to do a registration, and it just, the cost of regulating that makes it difficult. And then that's going to be hard for owner handlers and smaller groups. Plus trying to certify because of the variety of service animals, it would be hard to do. But it doesn't exist. The only ones that do are fake. Most of y'all watching this probably know that already. But she was yapping about that. And I said, "Okay, that's fake." She was like, "Oh, really? You want me to show it to you?" I said, "Sure, go ahead. And I'll show you where the law says that's not, first of all, you don't need it. And second of all, yeah, no." And so she was getting so loud, the assistant manager actually called the police. And I was like, "All right, fine. This is obviously not legit. I'm good with that." By the time she got on the phone with police, and it was because the area we're in, they called the county, the deputy sheriff ended up showing up. But I went ahead, checked out. I went and said, "I'll be right back." Went out to my car, got Aslan, and brought him in. The lady's still in there at this point. Aslan is laying at my feet. This little dog is just, he was, it was like funny a little bit. There's a couple, and the dogs make different noises. There's a couple of weird noises this dog made where Aslan, from his head on the floor, actually kind of picked his head up and kind of looked at him, and then looked up at me, and I didn't even have to say leave it. I just shook my head, and he puts his head back down like, ah. And once he huffed, he did. He was just like, ah. So I have no idea what the dog was saying to him, but it was kind of amusing the way he reacted a little bit. But the manager had informed this other lady she called the police. Well, she left before they showed up. She did stay in the shopping center, and I think they did get a chance to talk to her, but she bailed. She was grumping about all of a sudden I had brought my service animal in and I was just showing off because Aslan's laying there. This dog is barking at him. He's just like, whatever. So the hard part, the deputy sheriff shows up and comes in, talk to the manager, and then comes up and talk to me. And I told him, been training, this is mine. Here's the deal. I was not as familiar as I am now with the state laws, but obviously I knew the federal law. And so we're talking, and this part of what upset me, I knew roughly about as far as some of the criminal, that it was a crime in the state for some certain things. And this deputy sheriff flat out told me, I know you hear if you see something, say something. He said, that doesn't always apply. And I was like, excuse me, they're breaking the law. That's not okay, especially not the danger they're putting other people in. And he's like, well, nobody would ever prosecute it. It's like, are you kidding me? And of course, he said, and this was right before, I want to say it was right before I started law school. But again, I was familiar with federal stuff, somewhat familiar with state, enough that I could have this conversation with him. And he said, well, nobody's going to ever be able to prove it. And I said, wait a minute. I've got the registration papers. That's fraudulent, period, end of story. It's like, well, no prosecutor would ever do anything. I'd be pushing hard, but that's just me. But after it was obvious, he's like, just leave it alone. Don't say anything. All right. You know what? Whatever. Let him leave. And I actually, when I got home, I called both his sergeant and his lieutenant, both of which said, no, if you see, please say something. Again, they agreed this could be a danger to others. The dog was growling and doing all sorts of stuff in that cart. Had it been down where it could actually do something to somebody, that's a problem. And so they were not happy. Bear in mind, too, even in a state where it's the law, police officers don't memorize the laws. They don't. They can look them up, but there's very few laws they memorize. So you being familiar with it, if you're going to advocate for them, that's important. They said, look, whether they know it, they could look it up. You can tell them, hey, this is in there, and they can look it up really easily nowadays. But the lieutenant sergeant were like, no, please say something. We will talk to this deputy. Please say something. And I did end up talking to the store manager a couple days later. I had gone back in because I knew she was there. And we talked about, because I have, before we moved up here, I had several employee meetings with several businesses where I said, look, here's your federal laws. And at the time, the state I lived in, here's your state laws. Here's how to handle this situation. Here's what's okay, what's not. And bear in mind, every time I did that, it was as a trainer, service animal trainer, service dog trainer, because I've never trained one of the miniature horses. But I'm not giving legal advice. I should have said that to begin with. I'm not. This is not. Don't take it that way. But as a trainer, look, here's best ways to handle this, and here's what applies as a service animal team. And I offered, and the manager got all excited about it, and never got a call back. That's happened many times before. But I had been back in that store, never ran into that particular person again, the lady with the dog, but ran into a couple other. There was one that was well-trained service dog, and then there was one that was, and the one that was, started growling at Aslan, and the manager said, the manager actually asked that person, are you about to check out? And they said, yes. Then you need to do that and go, because you can't, the dog can't react that way to the other service dog. But yeah, so this is long video. Make sure you're giving accurate information, please. I don't want to stop people from advocating at all, but we need to make sure we're doing it accurately. We don't want to give information that's not true, that's not accurate. So for those out there, like I said, the person I've seen make several videos recently and said, oh, this person could go to jail. Not under the ADA, like they were saying. And they've got, almost 200,000 subscribers. So please just make sure it's accurate. But please be willing. Look up, it's easy to find these laws. Be willing to be an advocate, because, there's plenty of handlers out there that can't for one reason or another. And then there's a lot of people that don't know the laws, like the fast food restaurant, my last story time. They didn't know the law. And you know, once I inform them of it, okay, great, we're going to fix our training on this. That's a perfect reaction. The one that happened down there, not the greatest. And now after seeing a couple of recent videos and hearing about the possibilities, I'm gonna have to go test, because I haven't had any issues with the one close to me where I live, because we lived further down, for about 7 or 8 miles south of where we are now. But I'm gonna have to test them again. I may just go ask managers, you know, are you willing to say something? And so, but anyway, I'll try to get off my soapbox. Long video. Hopefully it was informative. You know, again, I want to keep it positive. Please, again, advocate, but do it accurately. And hopefully being able to explain some of the differences helps too. Because, I mean, I didn't know about the CFR, because the information you get is just, okay, here's what the ADA says. You've got on the ADA website, it's got the FAQ, the frequently asked questions. It's got a couple of pages of here's what you need to know. So people don't have a clue where to actually find the statutes and the regulations. And yeah, hopefully that makes sense, where you get to understand, okay, federal, state, civil, criminal. Obviously, there's issues with probably every country's justice system. I think ours is doing better than most. Could it be improved? Again, I'm trying not to get on my soapbox about the Air Carrier Access Act and the recent airline stuff. That needs to be changed. I would like to see changes to the CFR over with the ADA in general, as far as service dogs and training as well, or service animals and training. We'll see. I would love to see it. It hasn't happened. I think the most recent big update to the regulations for the ADA itself was, I want to say 2011. Might have had some updates 2013, but the big one was 2011, when they updated a lot, narrowed it down to dogs and miniature horses. That was a huge help, because yeah, I was around before those updates, and let me tell you, those updates helped. But anyway, hopefully this is informative, encouraging. Gemini's asleep. I'm in my office at the moment. Let me see. Hey, Gemini, come say hi. Come on. He's laying back here on the chair and a half. He's like, I don't want to get up. Hey, come here. Come here. Come say hi. Come on. Oh, you see him a little bit. Oh, nope, got off the ottoman. Come say hi. Come here. Come say hello to everybody. He's standing next to me like, oh, he's stretching. Say hi. Here, jump up in mine. I'll show y'all what he does sometimes for classes and stuff. Come on. Get up here, silly. Now you won't when I'm calling you up. All right, I'm in my desk chair. Yeah. And that's, this is what I get at class, and sometimes when I'm online in court, and people are like, oh my gosh, here, hey, Gemini, settle, all the way. No, don't get out there. Yeah, there we go. Keep going. There we go. There's a good settle. Yeah, now he's got his front end on my lap. So, you can say bye to everybody. We love y'all. Hope y'all enjoyed. Like, subscribe. We'll try to keep more content going. I just really wanted to address this issue, so. Anyway, we love y'all. Y'all take care. Yeah. All right. Bye, y'all. Yep, he's getting up.